Welcome to another episode of the Wandering Watercolor. Let's paint. Okay, so this is the 9th page of the Majestic Horses watercolor coloring book that I make. As always, you want to have a place to mix your colors. This is just a soap dish. Any porcelain dish works. I usually recommend porcelain because they're white and you can see the colors as you're mixing them, and then they're very easy to clean. Any brush is fine. This is the Prang semi-moist 8-count watercolor palette, and I've been using this one a lot more recently, mainly because 1, it's very easy to get. You can find it pretty much anywhere, and 2, it's actually very affordable. So if you paint every single day like I do, this is a really good set to have. So that's what we'll be using, although any set is totally fine. I'll show you how to mix the colors, so even if you have something else, it'll work just fine. And I also don't use the different fancy names like phthalo blue or emerald green. I just say red, orange, yellow, green, blue, so on and so forth. And then jar of water here, I always have it on the side just so I have more space to show. And then a rag or paper towel, something to just dry off your brush. Whatever you have will work, and you may not even have to use it. And a piece of paper on the side. I often have just a random paper just to test out colors, and it doesn't have to be anything special. It could just be a regular piece of paper. Sometimes it's just more about getting the feel and seeing how the color looks, even though watercolor paper does have a specific look when you lay down the colors on it. Okay, so for this one, the emphasis is going to be obviously on the object, which is the horse. And so we're going to kind of almost do like a vignette where we put in some color in the background, in the foreground, but we don't want it to take away from the main subject. So we'll keep that in mind as we paint. So first I'm just gonna get some green just directly from the palette. And what I'll do is I'll mix it up with some water because I want it to be more transparent. The first layer, I usually always try to make the first layer a little more transparent, and just darken it up as needed as we go along. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and I'll just lay that in like that, just carefully. Try not to get it inside of the horse, and if you do a little bit, it's not a big deal. But basically I'm just blocking in the color. Like, I'm not really trying to do any textures, no shading. I'm just blocking in the color right now. Now you can tell as you're painting this that it gets lighter the longer you paint, just because the brush is basically running out of the paint. And then as we go further away from the horse, I'm just going to press against the paper and then just kind of pull away. Actually, I'm just going to get some water on the brush, just water, no paint. And just kind of pull away, just like that, while pressing up against the paper just to kind of pick up some of that texture. And do the same back here. And just kind of fades it out. And then while that's drying, we can actually go ahead and mix up the background color here for the mountains. Now for that, we're going to add a little bit of brown to the green. One reason is we wanted to darken it. If you really want to darken a color, you always just add the complementary. For green, that would be red. Brown does have a good amount of red in it, but we also want to keep it more muted, more earthy, so that's why we're using brown. And then we're also going to put in some blue. The reason being is if you're out and about in nature, when you look at things that are further away, they actually have a little bit of blue to them because of the atmosphere. So when something's further away, it actually looks a little more blue. That's why mountains often have more of a blue tint to them when they're very far away, because you're actually looking through the atmosphere and you see, and that affects how they look. And so this color is pretty good right here. We'll go ahead and we'll start doing the same exact thing. We'll just fill in, just slowly, no rush, just fill in right here. And when we get to right about here, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the foreground, which is basically I'm going to rinse off my brush and then just keep some water on there, not a lot, just to kind of draw out some of the paint and just kind of, maybe I'll get a little more color, draw it out and then just push it away from the horse, just to kind of create like a texture, but also give the sense of a background. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Honestly, it's kind of like if you're a little more chaotic about it, it adds more to the emphasis of where the focal point is. And then we're going to grab a little more color and go back here. And I try to be slower as I'm going around the details of the main object, which is the horse. Okay, and then same thing. Rinse off a little bit of moisture on the brush and just kind of pull the color away and fade it out, showing some of the texture of the paper by pressing on it with the brush. Gonna rinse the brush. And now, so the next thing that I'll do is, while that part is drying, we're gonna go back into the grass and we're going to get a lot more pigment, a lot more paint, less water. So we're grabbing a lot of green here, as you can tell, and just a little bit of water, not a lot, because we want it to be very saturated, since we will use that saturated paint to mark basically a shadow in the grass. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to just do some slow, like upward strokes right underneath where the horse is. And it'll show that's kind of like a, shadow of the horse, you know, that's being cast down underneath it. So just like that. Very short strokes, just to kind of show. Okay. And then I'm gonna rinse off my brush, dry it off a little bit, and there's still a very small amount of moisture with paint on the brush. And then as I go further away, I'm just gonna do a little bit here and there, just to show, kind of like, oh, there's some blades of grass, showing that there's, you know, the texture of the ground, really. And not too much, just a little bit, like that. And that's good. Go ahead and I'll rinse off my brush completely. And then we'll go back to the background. I'm going to get a little more green, a little more brown, mix it up, a little blue, mix all that up. And same thing, except this time we're not really adding texture, we're just adding a darker tone so we can separate the horse from the background more. So the way we do that is we're just going to lay in another layer of the same color, just darker, more intense. And that'll help the horse itself stand out a lot better. Okay, so I'm going to do that right there. I rinse off my brush, dry it off, and then just pull off some of the color. like that. And more slowly just kind of rub it into the paper, but you can see that as you pull it out further, it just kind of fades out. And then same color, just more for the back here, on top of the back. And you can see how the horse really starts to stand out as we darken those colors. That. And then same thing, rinse off my brush and just a little bit of moisture on the brush, and then pull that out. And I'm going to step back for a moment. Yes, I like how that looks. And so the next thing, we'll focus on mixing the color that we'll use for the horse. Now this is just a white horse. Part of the reason is if we were to, you can honestly paint it however you want, but leaving the horse white actually creates a really good balance with the rest of the image, because we're leaving this part white, and then the horse here, it actually has a really nice balance in terms of light, and it helps it stand out more from the background. If you paint it in, let's say if you make like a black horse or a brown horse, it'll throw the whole painting kind of off balance. So what we'll do is we'll grab some blue, some brown, and I use these two colors to kind of mix like a cool gray. If I'm painting anything in nature that needs like a gray or a black, I never just get straight black, just because that would make it look very synthetic. And in nature, you almost never find just a pure black color, unless it's like charcoal or something after a forest fire. So what we'll do is, I'm going to dilute this a lot. I want it to be very light. And then we can always build up on top of that if we wanted to darken it. So this is probably good. So this right here, this mixture has a lot of water, and this is just mostly paint with a little bit of water. This is a lot more water, a lot less paint. And then what we'll do is we'll just fill it in where the shadow would be. So this is like the shadow on the belly of the horse, a little bit on the back leg muscles here. Definitely the legs that are further away from us would have a lot of shadow on them. Like that. A little bit over here just to show kind of like the indents for the muscle definition. A little bit down here on the tail. Just kind of like on the lower part. Over here following the neck muscles. Just some shading underneath the jaw. Like that. A little bit on the ridge here where the nose is, and then here, and maybe a little bit on the eyebrow. I'm gonna dry off my brush. Actually, this was too much over here. I'm gonna pick up some of that excess. Now these shadows will lighten up a lot as they dry, and that's really the general rule with watercolor, is when it dries it always looks lighter. I'm gonna rinse off my brush, and I'm gonna step back from this one for a second again. Okay, so that looks pretty good so far, actually. We just need to wait for some of this color to dry. Now, you always have the option to, if you want the horse to stand out more from the background, you can always add another layer for the background color. And you can also do that for the grass as well. However, I really like how this looks. So what I'm going to do is, I don't need to do any outlines necessarily. That's just I would prefer to add a little bit of outlines just to kind of separate the horse more from the background, even though this would be perfectly fine on its own if you wanted to finish it here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my pen, any just regular old black ballpoint pen. Honestly, you could probably even use blue, to be honest. And I'm going to do some outlines, but not everywhere, mostly kind of like where the bottom of the horse would be, just to separate it more from where the light is hitting it. So here, I'll show you what I mean. So I'll go ahead and I'll put in a little bit here, maybe a little bit here for the jaw. Like that, a little bit under here. A little bit under the tail. And then the back leg here, this one. Maybe a little bit for the ears. And also the hooves. And that's actually it. I think that looks really good. I'm very happy with that, with how that looks. It looks very clean and elegant, and you can definitely easily make out the horse from the background. So I'll go ahead and I'll stop it right there before I overwork it. And if you have any questions, just leave me a message, shoot me an email, whatever works, and I'll see you on the next one.